Good morning, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's topic is on complete resource management with WorkMax with presenter Eric Hammersmark from About Time Technologies. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is on mute, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box on the screen and we will address them at the end of the session. The webinar will be recorded and we will email out a copy to everyone later today. I will now turn it over to you, Eric.
Very good. Thank you for that introduction, Krista. I've been on the sales team here at About Time and WorkMax for, gosh, it's going on 9 years now. So a lot of experience helping clients get their mobile employees under control and tracked and integrating with your Sage products. A little bit of background, we've been around since 2003. About Time got started back then. We've released WorkMax, which is our web-based platform, about 5 years ago. So we've got a lot of clients up and running on WorkMax and people moving over from the About Time platform. Of course, you know, what we've always tried to get rid of is paper documentation and paper timesheets. It's always a big issue with people. No matter what accounting system you have, if you're pulling data in on paper, it's very cumbersome. There's just no way around it. You have people who may be exaggerating their time. There's a lot of time spent doing manual data entry into accounting and payroll. So with WorkMax and About Time, we can eliminate a lot of that. We can get more accurate time information, streamline that whole process of getting it into your accounting system. Now, we do have, as I mentioned, the new cloud-based system, WorkMax, which is essentially the same thing, the same system as About Time, but we've re-engineered it to be to live in the cloud and live on the web. So it doesn't require anything to be installed on your server or on your network. In the About Time world, you know, all your mobile devices would sync to your server. So everyone that had needed access to the data would have to get on the server and be able to view that. With WorkMax, in the cloud, the advantage, or I think one of the key advantages, and this is from my experience with some of my existing clients, is that, you know, once the people in the field sync their devices, the data rolls up into the cloud and you can get access to that data really from any device anywhere. It's much less restrictive than in the traditional configuration that we had with About Time. So the cloud-based option makes it very visible to any approvers or any administrators anywhere, and you have the added benefit of we really don't even have to install, you know, anything on your server. In terms of devices, we can run on Android devices, iPhones and iPads, even Windows devices in the field. You don't even need a signal. This often comes up in the field with mobile employees. They may be working in an area with no coverage, you know, maybe in a remote area, or sometimes in a big city, you might be, you know, in the sub-basement of a large building. Again, maybe no coverage, no signal, and that's fine. On the mobile devices, they can run in what we call disconnected mode, meaning they don't have to have connectivity to use the software. Even if you're way out in a remote area, you can still collect all the data you need 24/7, no outages or downtime at all. But if you have no signal at the moment, that's fine. When you do get back into coverage, then you can go ahead and sync your time then. So there's really no need to worry about spotty or no coverage in certain circumstances. Now we have two main workflows, and this really starts to get into the guts of how we track time. And there's kind of a third method, which is a hybrid of the first two. With real time, this is what we were built on way back in the beginning, where you treat your mobile device as if it's a portable time clock. And when you show up at the job site, you punch in. At the end of the day, you punch out. And if you do multiple jobs or multiple tasks, or you know, cost codes or phase codes in the day, you can clock into those too as you go along. So it's really flexible with real time. Either the crew leader or the foreman could track time for their entire crew, or some people have individual people just tracking time for themselves on their own device. You can even have a little bit of a mixture of both. Lots of flexibility built into this. I won't bore you with the details now, but you can clock in on any device, anywhere in the system, even if you bounce around between devices, and clock out on an iPad on the wall in the shop at the end of the day. All of that works just fine with our real-time tracking method. A second method that we have is called the digital timesheet. And digital timesheet doesn't require that in and out punch to collect your start and stop times. This is more of a traditional fill in your timesheet after the fact kind of approach, where at the end of the day or the end of the week, we'd really prefer you do it daily just because it's fresh, but you can fill in these timesheets whenever you can and submit them just like we did with real-time records. I have seen clients where they're salaried individuals like estimators or engineers or supervisors. They may be filling in a digital timesheet for their time. And since they're on salary, it doesn't require them to punch the clock, which most salaried people get annoyed with. So those people could be designated as a timesheet user. And then even in the same company database, in the same system, you can have all of your hourly people using real time. So that would be their designated tracking method. We do have one other, it's kind of a hybrid of the two. A lot of clients prefer this method where in the morning, when an employee shows up, they clock in, we can get a GPS fix on their location, we can take their photo, we do the same thing at punch out, but they want to let their supervisor or foreman do what we call a time allocation. So the crew leader or the foreman can sit down at the end of the day and say, okay, this crew did 4 hours of demolition and 4 hours of framing, and just break that time up by the different tasks. And I'll show you this in the system where they can do that time allocation at the end of the day. Now with real time, another one of the accountability features that we can get is a fix on their location when they punch the clock. When they punch in, we can verify their location on the map. We can also overlay a geofence. And what that does is if they clock in at the job, no problem, no notification. But if they clock in and they're 10 miles down the road sipping coffee at a Starbucks, then you do get a notification, and that lets their supervisor go, what's wrong with this time record? Why were they 10 miles down the road? Now, maybe they were at Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that picking up some supplies, and that might make sense. But if they're at Starbucks, you can zoom in on their location and see, why were you guys clocking in when you were still at Starbucks? So that is a very useful time verification option. Now with facial recognition, in About Time, in our enterprise product, we have the ability to just snap a photo. And that's fine. It's a good way to kind of make sure that the right person is on the clock when they're clocking in. But with WorkMax, we took this to another level. And as far as I know, we're the only construction time app that can do this, where we'll actually, within the software, compare the photo that's taken on clock in with the file photo on file. And if it's not a match, and it's doing a biometric facial recognition comparison, if it's not a match, it'll red flag that record so that you'll know, hey, there's an issue with this time record. Now, in both systems, we've had this in About Time. We also have it in WorkMax, where you can design and create your own custom forms. These are great for all kinds of different purposes. I think in my opinion, the safety forms is maybe the best possible use of forms. If you have to close down a lane of traffic and you want to show where you've set the cones and put up your signage and protected the sidewalk, all these different things to cover your rear, filling out a safety form like that and taking photos is a great way to cover your backside. You can collect signatures, you can take pictures, you can even sketch on the pictures that you take. So if you have to submit a change request or a change order, go ahead and draw on the photo and send that in to the architect, and they will see that immediately, and it's a lot easier than trying to do it, on paper. So let's go ahead and get started here. In the field, I have and I'm actually using an iPad to show you the mobile device. Let me see if I can get my Air Server turned on. I use a little tool called Air Server that allows me to connect my mobile device to my workstation here so you can see my screen. Let me get rid of this. And I apologize, I should have had that already launched. So bear with me for just a quick second. Here it comes. Okay, so there we go. This is the live screen on my iPad. Now the mobile app is going to look, let me shrink that down a little bit, the same on an iPhone or a Android phone. So the look and feel of the app is the same regardless of the device. But I'm going to go ahead and turn on my my WorkMax app. So your field people would have access to this on their mobile devices in the field. So let's use that one example of I'm an individual and I'm going to track my own time when I clock in. So I have a user set up for myself. You can have a 4 to 10 digit PIN number. Now in my case, I have it set up where I can pick location. If I need more information, like where is the job? Can you show me driving directions to the job? You can hit the little information button. But let's go ahead and say, today I'm working out at the FedEx office. And it pulls up my profile so the device knows this is me. I have these permissions. I can use real time on the time clock. I can view and sign off on my time records, and I do have access to forms. But for now, let's look at the time. So I'm going to go ahead and clock in. It knows I'm out at FedEx. At the bottom down here, I'm going to hit the in button. So I'm going to clock in. Next thing I'll see is my list of phase codes or cost codes. So maybe I'm starting my day, doing some plastering. So I'll choose that. And then notice up here, there's a little selfie. It's going to take my picture and confirm that in punch with a photo of me as I clock in. Now, just to show you that facial recognition comparison, I want to try to show you what happens if someone is trying to cheat. Some companies, this is not a big deal. Other companies, this is the main reason why they look at our system, is we want to hold the field more accountable to get more accurate time records. So I have a second employee here. This is actually a female, Miriam. And let's say Miriam called me up and says, hey, Eric, can you clock me in? I'm still 5 minutes away from the job site. So if that happened, this is what it would look like. I'm going to go ahead and clock in as if I was Miriam. She has a slightly different workflow. She doesn't choose any cost codes. She just clocks in and out. So it got my photo there on clock in. Now I'm going to go ahead and sync this to the cloud. So I'm going to hit my full sync and get those time records to roll up into the cloud. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the administrative part of our system, there is a database. It lives on Amazon Web Services. That's our cloud hosting service. As you can see here, I've got my internet screen. I'm just in a web browser. So here's the Accordant website. I've got web access. All I have to do is log in to the administrative database on the server. Whoops, username and password, of course. So now I'm in the administrative console in the cloud. I sync those 2 time records into the cloud, and they're here where I can review, make edits if necessary, maybe even some changes. So I'm going to go to my time, and let's see here. I need to move my control panel out of the way just a little bit. So here I've got some some time records that I already set up in advance of this meeting for Franco, for Charles, and for Tyler. But I did go ahead and get a couple of other time punches. Now, where'd they go? I just clocked in and out for, that's today's date, Thursday the 4th. Now, I am not sure what happened to those. Let me do another quick sync. So I did have a time record for myself and the other one for Miriam. There they go. Okay, not sure why I didn't see them on that first sync. So, okay, so I've got these other time records that I set up, and then here's these two, the one for me and the one for Miriam that I set up. You know, it's showing me, let's look at this one for me, that I was out at the FedEx office, clocked in at 9:14. This is Mountain Time I'm in, so that was 3 minutes ago. And I chose a cost code of plastering. With Miriam, she clocked in, but she doesn't get to choose a cost code. That's done later by her supervisor. But I've got some red flags over here. Number one, this is an incomplete entry. I still don't have an out punch yet. So you can see my in punch, my out punch is still empty. So I'm getting a flag. Same with Miriam. I'm getting a GPS notification and a red flag on facial recognition. But if I go in here, let's look at my facial recognition. So you can see my photo on file. Here's my picture that I just took. Now notice I'm wearing a baseball cap and I do have a headset on. So it's affecting the match a little bit, but I still have a 90% match. That is a really good match. And even though I'm wearing, you know, a cap, it still knows that, hey, that's Eric. You know, our threshold is set at 75%. But if I come up here to Miriam, and let's take a look at that issue. Now this is actually Christina from the cable TV show Fix or Flop. But you can see it's a partial match. It knows that I have two eyes, a nose, and a mouth like she does, but I'm only getting 17% on the match. So the system is going to red flag that record, and it will know that, hey, there's an issue with the time records because I was cheating and I was trying to clock in for another person. On the GPS too, while we're in here, if I look at that, let me scroll down here. You can see the job site has a geofence. Let me blow that up a little bit. So you can see over here at the FedEx, if I zoom in a little more, there you go. I'm supposed to be clocking in at the FedEx office center. I've got a very short little quarter of a mile geofence built around that website, but you can see my in punch here. You know, I'm a half a mile away from the job site. I was close, but not quite there. So, you know, maybe I was over here at McDonald's clocking in and the job site's still a block down the road or a couple blocks away. That geofence would be able to catch me, you know, if I make that kind of a trying to fake a time record like that. Now, if I come back up here, let me look at these other time records. I've got, you know, let me move this out of my way again here. So if I look at these time records here for Franco and Charles and Tyler, you know, let's say that I did get a start and a stop time from them, 6:30 to 4, 7 to 4 on the other two guys. If you had the scenario, this is kind of the hybrid method. Let's say I wanted to time allocate those guys. They really didn't give me any cost codes or anything, but I want to break up that time. I can come in and do a time allocation. And speaking of time, I was going to look at my clock here. Okay, we're doing pretty good. Let's go ahead and say that I want to break that time up for these three guys, maybe from when they started till 10 o'clock, they were doing plastering, and their total units, maybe they all did 250 square feet. If you want to track equipment time, you can record an asset or a piece of equipment in the time record too. And then that way you can see I'm just starting to split out their time records. Let's say from 10 until 2 p.m. they were doing a different activity. Let's pick insulation. And then finally maybe they round out their day. They all worked until 4. So if we do this until the end of day, and maybe they finished off their time doing electrical, that way it's really simple and easy to allocate time records after the fact. And that happens a lot. A lot of guys bounce around between activities all day long, and they just want to do the time allocation or the job cost division of all the time and let the foreman handle that for them. So that kind of shows a couple of our tracking methods: real time by individual, time after the fact allocation by a couple. If you're a supervisor, this is something I didn't show yet. And if I am a real-time manager, I've got an employee in here named Arnie. Now, I could be a crew leader and have access to the time clock. And not only will it allow me to have a time punch for myself, but notice here it says other employees. So I could pick, let's say Tyler and Franco and Henry, and I could clock 3 people in at the same time. Maybe we're all doing insulation. In this case, it's going to take a picture of the supervisor, but you can see I can clock in multiple people at the same time on the same time record. Another option that I haven't shown yet is that digital timesheet. I have a different manager named Henry. In his case, let's say we're at a job site and we want to be able to have a supervisor or a foreman simply fill in a timesheet for the crew. So if you have that scenario, this is what that would look like. Again, I can choose from my list of options here. I'm a timesheet user in this case. So I'm going to fill out a timesheet for myself and for a couple of other people. You do have to give it a name. So I usually just like to give it a date. Today is the 4th. So I'm going to call this April 4. Hit create. And now for these 3 individuals, I can just go in on my device. Notice I have myself, Franco, and Henry. It defaulted to 8 hours. I can put in production units, add a piece of equipment, simply touch the screen under cost codes, and so forth to create that digital timesheet. We're running a little short on time, but do know that there's options here. You can hit the down arrow to allocate it to different tasks and so forth, but really it's just a matter of picking your guys, picking the job, and then saving that timesheet and sending it into the office. Now, a couple more things while we still have time. I wanted to show a couple of the administrative pieces in the control center. And forgive me for going really fast. We're trying to work this into the half an hour that we've got. If I look in the time system, this is the administrative setup. There's a lot of really powerful tools in here where you can set up different employee groups, different permissions for different groups. In terms of time, we can set up overtime rules for different groups of people. Overtime is really powerful where you can do anything over 40 for the week. We can do conditional overtime where maybe their overtime happened on a Monday and not Friday. We can ding the job on Monday for the job that had the overtime. So lots and lots of rules and settings in there, different pay groups and so forth, so that all the time gets coded properly. We also have the ability, as I mentioned, to create forms. I do have a couple of different form options in here where you can do accident reports or daily logs. Let me just show. Here's an example of a completed form. And this is just a daily log type report where you injured on the job. Did you complete an injury report form? These can be conditional, where it'll trigger me to do an accident report form. But you can take pictures, as I mentioned. You can even sketch or draw on the pictures. Any other types of information, including signatures down at the bottom. So forms can be a really nice way to round out collecting data from the field. Now I think that kind of, let me show you one more thing, okay, and then I'll wrap it up. When we are ready to hand off the time records over to Sage, we have one more feature called batching. You may want to review and approve the records too. I didn't show you that, but if I want to sign off and approve of the records here, I can do that in the office. I can do that out in the field. But then it's just a matter of highlighting your time records for the week, for the pay period. It'll probably show you the previous week, maybe a Sunday through a Saturday. You batch the records. You just simply hit the batch button. And from there, we hand it off back over to Sage in the traditional fashion. If you're on Sage 300, we just do this file. We'll batch the file out of WorkMax, and then you import it into Sage 300. With Sage 100, we do have to use the API interface with Sage 100, so it's almost the same thing, but you basically just hit a connect button, and then all the data lands in Sage 100. From there, you go ahead and process payroll as normal, and your burden of having to manually input all those time records into Sage is taken care of by this handoff from WorkMax into Sage. So I think I just barely got it in the time allowed. I suppose, Krista, this might allow for a little time for a couple of questions to be asked.
So right now we don't have any questions. If you do have a question, please type it into the box and we'll be happy to answer it for you. I'll just wait a minute.
I'm sure we can also do follow-up questions afterward too.
Absolutely. Not seeing any questions, so our contact information will be in the follow-up email with the recording. So if you do have questions, you can feel free to reach out.
Well, that sounds great. Krista, thanks for inviting us to host this webinar. Hope that it gave everybody a taste of what WorkMax can do. And of course, work with Krista and Al James, our partner channel manager, on that. And we'd be happy to provide more information.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you for attending.